Are we in focus? I think we are. I think we can commence. Oh, oops. I should really turn that off because... Okay, I'm feeling like so classy in this little white. Stupid. Come on! My face is right here. It's just that I'm looking extra beautiful, huh? You can't recognize me? I have makeup on, bitch. Let's talk about the books that I read in January, but first let's remove the glasses because no. I was supposed to have read 12 books. I read 6. I started 9. It's all good. Let's talk about the books that I read in the month of January. Let's start off by saying that all of the books that I read in the month of January were audiobooks, except for some of the rollover books because I did start 9, like I already said, and I finished only 6 of those 9 that I started. So I do have 3 rolled over. I already finished 1, so technically we have 2 rolling over. But one of the books that rolled over was my actual physical read. And so that's how much I'm struggling with physically reading at the moment. So what can we do about that? Let's start off with the 3 books that will be rolling over onto February. The first one was the first book that I started the year with. It was my first read. I was hoping to finish it first, but it did not happen. Either way, I'm still enjoying it, and that is The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. I read The Chalkman many years ago. Ever since that release, I haven't read any more of CJ's books until now. The Gathering just sounded so interesting, and it was giving me like 30 Days of Night vibes. From the synopsis of the book, I gathered it was just giving me those kinds of vibes. Obviously, I'm sucking with my physical reads because the only one book I was physically reading and I couldn't even finish it. I just rather be listening to audiobooks and playing video games. That's just my vibe. I would venture to say that I like video games more than I like reading, but oops, can we say that here? Yes, absolutely we can. I love video games. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so I either like doing that or audiobooks and diamond painting. And like, why not? When you can do 2 things, why not do the 2 things, right? Really enjoying The Gathering. I'm hoping to finish it soon. I'm like 80% in. The second book that rolled over onto February is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. I have to say that slow because if not, my mouth just wants to go in different directions. Spoiler alert for March, because I always gotta have a little spoiler alert in my videos. I think there's one in every one of them, but I guess that's just my brand now. Spoiler alerts. I already finished this one. I am so happy to report that I already finished, because sometimes when my books roll over to the next month, they sort of get lost in the ether and never get finished. And this is how my currently reading shelf just grows throughout the year, but we're trying to keep that under control. I finished this one, really loved it, but more on that in my February wrap up. And the third book that rolled over onto February is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. This wasn't even on my TBR and my January TBR, but I had put a hold on this book like, I don't know, weeks and weeks prior to getting the actual book. So when it came in from the library, I was like, what the hell, let's just do it. Miss Procrastination, didn't finish the book on time. It got taken away and I just basically put it aside because, like I said, it wasn't part of my TBR or anything. So I was like, you know what? Whenever I get to it, I will get to it hopefully this month because I don't want it to roll over too much. To be quite honest with you, I really wasn't enjoying this book more than The Gathering, which would have been an option, was to just continue physically reading One Perfect Couple because I do own the book. But I was enjoying The Gathering more and I just thought, you know what, we'll finish this one later. So that one I am not too in a rush to finish, but I do want to. Hopefully before March gets here because I don't need books rolling 2 months at a time, which one of my books, 2 of my books on my currently reading shelf have been there for a couple months, a few months, not a couple, a few. And I'm a little bit stressed, but you know what? I don't feel like picking them up, so I'm not too worried. I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but I read a mix of horror, thrillers, crimes, and mysteries. I am back on my dark shit. All right, so the first book that I finished for the month of January was Boys in the Valley. I think this was a December rollover. This was one of the 24 books that I wanted to read in 2024. I was trying to finish it before the year was over, but I just couldn't. But it got finished in January, which made me kind of sad because, like I said, I really wanted The Gathering to be my full first read book of the year, but it didn't happen that way. This was absolutely fantastic. I don't know why I waited so long to read it. I've been dying to read this book, but this book is like a wintry book in my opinion. There's a lot of cold, there's snow, the setting is just very wintry, and so I was waiting for winter. Last winter I couldn't get to it because too many books, not enough time, and so it got rolled over to this winter, and just it was fantastic. Here we have Peter. He is our main character. When he was a young toddler, there was a gruesome murder and he ended up being orphaned. So he ends up at the St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. Right there, the setting is incredible. I love a good orphanage setting, especially obviously when it's done right. It's just the perfect setting. And in the winter, please say less. So in this orphanage, there's 30 boys. He's come to love life and love these boys as his family. He just works day in and day out. The priests there, which are the ones that look over the boys, are not the nicest. They are a bit harsh towards the boys, but Peter sort of brushes that off. I mean, they have some intense punishments because they really try to keep to the rules, at least the main priest does. The boys are somewhat thriving, even though their conditions really aren't the best. Just the way that they're treated, it could be a little bit harsh. But one night, these men show up to the orphanage in the middle of the night, and after this, shit hits the fan. Chaos is upon everybody, and it gets really, really intense, very gruesome, and very dark. Not for long periods of times, but some of the imageries in the book were intense, and like, I wish, and I know this is gonna sound ridiculous, and especially coming from a person that doesn't like horror movies. I love to read horror. I don't like to watch it as much. In the beginning of my 20s, that's all I did was watch horror movies, but somewhere along the line, just something disconnected for me, and I started reading horror more than watching it. But this is one of those books that I would really love to see as a movie, because especially with some of these scenes, they were just like, what the after the men get there, one of them dies, and there was an evil spirit within him, and it gets unleashed in the orphanage, and just boys start acting funny. They start forming groups, and it gets super brutal and intense. I highly recommend this one, especially if the settings sound amazing to you, because this was so good. I was gripped from beginning to end with this one, even though it took me a little bit of time to read just because of how I am. It was something that just gripped me from beginning to end. Highly recommend. If any of those things sounded good to you, just go ahead and pick it up, because it is amazeballs. Let's talk about the Whiteout series by Flint Maxwell. What did I just say? This is a series that I started back in 2022. The winter was over and I only got to read 3 books of the series. There is 5 books. So fast forward 2 years later, because I thought I was going to read it the next winter, but apparently I forgot about it until this past winter, or this winter. We're still in winter. What am I talking about? I reread the 3rd book for the series, and I read 4 and 5. So I completed the series. I'm so happy. First series down in the 100 series that I'm currently in. I did reread that one, and I'm so glad that I did, because as I was reading the book, I was like, wow, I don't remember anything of reading anything about this, but I do remember what happens in book 1 and book 2. Book 3 was a much needed refresh, and I almost didn't. I was like, I'm just gonna jump into book 4 and figure it out, because I remember the gist of it. But I'm glad I reread it, because like I said, I could not remember anything. There was like things that were happening that I was like, what? There was one main big event that really affected me, and I can't believe I couldn't remember that from the 2 years prior. I'm not going to talk about each and every one of those books. Basically what's going on, there is an apocalypse, and it's like a snow apocalypse. The first book is called Snow, and they're in the middle of summertime, and it just starts snowing, and it doesn't stop. But the snow does not come by itself. There is something sinister hiding in the background. I really enjoyed every one of these books, all 5 books. I think I gave 4 of them 4 stars and 1 a 3-star. The last book in the series, which is The Feeding, I gave 3 stars too. There's a lot of people that talk about it being a weak ending, like the author got a little bit lazy with it. I don't think so. I think it was a fine ending, but I do think that it wasn't as bam wow as book 1 and book 2, but I liked how the series ended for the most part. I was still left with one question, one main question. I don't know if it just wasn't discussed, because I remember a lot of people, while reading the reviews, a lot of people had that same concern, but a lot of other people say that they got a clear view of what was going on. So maybe it was something that us other people missed. It was a book about characters. It was following these sets of characters throughout the apocalypse. That's usually what apocalypse books are. They're more character driven, and that's what I love about it. So I was really connected to some of these characters. By the ending though, I wouldn't say I was as connected to some of the characters as I thought I was, but either way, just a book or a series that I really enjoyed. If you want something wintry to read, give this one a try. Like I said, there are 5 books, and each book ranges in between 250 to 300 pages, so they're really short. I think one of them even sits at 215 pages, if I'm not mistaken, so they're pretty quick reads, but I will say they're a little bit repetitive within the books, which could be a good thing if you really don't remember what you read in prior books. So give it a try if you're looking for something wintry. I read the child. What was that? What was that? I read The Child Found.
Oh gosh, founder. It's not a founder.
I read The Child Finder by...
No, not by. It's Naomi Cottle series. It's the first book in the Naomi Cottle series.
I read The Child Finder, which is book 1 in the Naomi Cottle series. Love this one. I gave this one 4 stars. Did I tell you guys what I gave Boys in the Valley? I gave Boys in the Valley 4 stars. Wow. Back to The Child Finder, 4 stars. In this book, we follow a missing little girl. A family is out one day at the Oregon's Skookum National Forest. They're out there just trying to get a Christmas tree when their little girl goes missing. At the time that she goes missing, she's 5 years old. And so we're following the story 3 years later. This family, it's the Culver's family, they contact Naomi Cottle. She is the child finder. She's really good at her job. She finds kids that are missing. Whether she finds them alive or dead, that's a different story, but she is really, really good at finding kids. The reason why she's so good though is because she was once a lost child. And so in this book, we're following her as she's working this case, but as she's working this case, it really reminds her of something within her own case that she can't remember. Did that make any sense? So something happened to her while she was missing that is sort of brought to the forefront by the case that she's currently working, and she's working through her own issues at the same time. It was a fantastic book. These people, these parents are like adamant that their child did not just go missing. They know for sure that somebody took this little girl. At least the mom is like, I know somebody took her and she is still alive in those woods. It was so good. It was so intense. I do plan on reading the second book. I think this is just a duology because I think the second book was written somewhere around 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So there's only 2 books, but I'm really interested to see what else happens in this series. The last book that I read for January is Freezer Burn by Jo R. Lansdale. I'm so happy to be checking off another one of my favorite authors' books. I have had this on my TBR for a few years now, and I can't believe that I actually freaking read it. Just like The Child Finder, that book has been sitting on my shelves for about 4 years already, and I'm just like knocking them out. I'm like, this one is a little bit of a hard book. It was a little bit of a disappointment. I gave it 3 stars. Let me start off by saying this. In this book, we follow Bill, and he has his mom freeze dried in her bedroom. The welfare checks are like piling up, but he just can't bring himself to like sign, like forge her signature. He's like too much of a chicken shit. His self-esteem is really, really low because his mom sort of like would talk down to him and stuff. And so he's like doing this out of spite, but at the same time, he doesn't know how to. And so in order to make some money, because obviously he can't get them from the welfare checks, he decides to rob a fireworks stand. But things go horribly wrong and he finds himself on the run with a freak show. Bill is such a vile character that it was hard to read sometimes. He's just like disgusting, and being in his head was just really toxic as fuck. The way he would be with people, but then behind their backs he would think something differently. He was a cheater at heart and a liar and a thief at heart. Just not a nice guy. But let me tell you, Jo R. Lansdale had me feeling sorry for him for this much of the book, that when I caught myself, I was like, whoa, 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 back it the up. Like, no way, because he was just gross, like just ill. And when I found myself like caring just remotely for what was going on in his life, I was like, wait 1 second, like, so good at his writing craft. Joe R. Lansdale is. He is just an amazing author, and the way he wrote this book was incredible in that sense. The ending I wasn't a huge fan of. I will say it was brilliant, but it was fucked up, and I don't know. It was a great ending, but at the same time, it didn't satisfy me. I wish it would have ended a different way, but nonetheless, I did enjoy my journey. One thing that I say always about Lansdale's books is that they are a true journey from beginning to end, and this one was no exception. So those are all the books that I read for the month of January. Let me know what you read and what was your favorite read of the month. Let's chat books in the comment section down below. As usual, these books will be linked in the description box for easy access. Every time I say that on the description box. All of my socials are down there as well, so that we can connect and keep chatting about books on other platforms. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.